And good morning, everyone, and welcome to PerfWeb 79, Day 1. I'm your host, Joe Basha. We're going to have a great show today, albeit I'm going to be here by myself because Tammy got called this morning for a type 1 dissection. I guess all those spinnings of the wheels, and she finally got the luck of the draw on that deal. So good luck, Tammy, on your type 1 dissection. I hope that case goes very well. Or it doesn't go and they get the patient transferred someplace else. That'd be even better. So good morning. I want to welcome everyone to our program. We should have, this is day 1 of a 4 days? 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And we're going to get started right away, get our opening remarks out of the way. Check out our app. If you have not what am I doing? Am I doing... Okay, so contact at perfusioneducation.com if you want to reach out to us. You're going to see some stuff on a scroll bar, but I'm just going to jump right into our app. We've done a couple of really cool updates on it that I think you will really value. So please check it out on the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. It is our MediWeb app. There's 2. There's one for clinical perfusion and critical care, and there's one for nurses in the ICU. The critical care app is only $2.99, and that also has the IV rate calculator. So if you're an ICU nurse, it'd be a great gift to give somebody or to yourself. But if you just want the IV rate calculator, that's a standalone, and that's only 99 cents. But for $2.99, you get both, and it's really the best app going on the market. There's no question it's the best app for critical care, ECMO specialists, perfusionists, you name it. So please get that app. What's next on the agenda? Podcasts. Check out our podcasts. All of our programs go up on podcasts, and you can find them on your favorite podcast streaming platform, whatever you want to use. And so check those out, and you can listen to us in the car and get to know us as people, get to know us as clinicians, get to know us as content experts, get to know us as opinion leaders, whatever the case may be. We've usually got great guests here in the studio, but again, it's a Tuesday and we're trying to figure out what's the best way to do this. But we're going to have a great guest today. Okay, so kid you not, we have a great guest today. Can I go right into that now? We're talking about the scroll bar. You see that scroll bar? All of the information that you need is on that scroll bar. You see over there our call-in number. I'm pointing to it down there. Call in if you want to be live on air, and we can get you talking with our guest today, which, again, let's introduce her right now because I think this is really the best. We have with us, hey, good morning, Ann. We have with us, Ann, good morning, Ann Guercio, who is the new president of the American Board of Cardiovascular Perfusion, and I am so incredibly pleased that she is here with us. Now, do we need to get Ann more centered? Oh, could you move to your left a little, Ann? Move to your left.
To my left.
There you go. Now you're right in the center. So we have with us Ann Guercio, and for those of you who don't know Ann, she's a graduate of the Texas Heart Institute School of Perfusion in 1986, if I remember correctly. And you are currently with Memorial Hermann. Of course, your husband, Sal, God bless him. He's recently passed a little while ago. There's going to be is it the 50th anniversary, right, of the Texas Heart Institute School of Perfusion, and they're going to be announcing a grant. It's not called a memorial. It's called a grant of some sort, right? And maybe you could explain it.
Certainly. So first of all, Joe, thanks for having me this morning. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you in person. I know we have a lot more fun in person, but you're dressed as I am, it looks like, this morning.
Yes, ma'am.
We're working and trying to do it all. So in terms of the 50th anniversary of Texas Heart Institute School of Perfusion, we are going to award our first ever Sal Memorial Guercio Scholarship.
Outstanding. Scholarship. That's the word I was looking for. I had COVID. I don't know if you knew that or not, but I had COVID.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah, I did. I went through all of this, got the vaccine, got the booster, worked around it before the vaccine ever existed, worked through it while the vaccine, I was getting the first dose, second dose, and then later the third dose, this booster shot, made it through all of that, and then got COVID. And either the vaccines didn't work and I got COVID, and COVID was really bad. It was terrible. It felt terrible. Or the vaccine really worked, because if it blunted it in any way and it was effective, it would have probably killed me. It was horrible. And for 4 days, I couldn't move. I thought I just wanted to die. It was horrible. And so, but I'm getting over it. I'm much better now. It's really hard to, kill people like me. We're just too mean to get killed, too mean to die, meaner than the virus. That's what they think anyway, sometimes. But anyway, I wanted to congratulate you. I'm very proud of the new scholarship that's going to be introduced this year at Texas Heart Institute. I think that's such a fitting thing to do and such a beautiful thing to do. And I know that something you have to be very proud of, but you need to be proud of yourself and your own personal accomplishments. You've been in this profession for a very long time. You have contributed so incredibly, so significantly over all of these years. Continue to be a contributor to this profession that I've been in for a long time as well, and truly love and want to see endure and grow and do well. And now, as the president of the ABCP, you have earned a well-deserved thank you for everything you have done for the profession of perfusion.
Oh, Joe, that's so nice. But I agree with you that I'm still doing this because I want it to continue for every new grad, every perfusionist out there that loves this profession as much as we do. There are some forces out there as healthcare changes that we're always going to be dealing with, but I just really want to make sure that we've got a future for all of our peers.
Absolutely. So I'm very much looking forward to your presentation, and then we can have some really, I think, very good, robust discussions. I've got several questions that I have been wanting to ask you, and I think this is a great platform to do that with. But I know that the American Board is going through some very significant changes, and the future of the board is something that is now, you are at the helm of, and we'd like to know what the future looks like for this very important institution.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And so as I present, Joe, I'll stop every now and again, and you're free to interject along the way. So
thank you.
I mean, I know we would banter better in person off each other, but you're certainly welcome to jump in on my presentation. Okay, so the topic is future of the ABCP, and again, we want, it could be a dry subject, and oh yeah, the board, I got certified and I recertify, and that's kind of it. But there's a lot more going on there with the American Board and who we collaborate with, and how we work with these other organizations to, try to keep your credential at the high standard it is. You've earned it, and you are stewards of it. And we want to make sure that continues. We want to also be able to roll with the changes in our technology, things that are coming along, things that come up, how that affects the certification and recertification cycle and standards and requirements. So we really want to collaborate with all of you, all of our CCPs. That's what we're here to credential you, but we're also here to represent you and hear from you. So if there's anything from this presentation I'd like you to take away, is that please let us know. We really want to represent you. We want to know what's happening to everyone in their practice, whether it's large or small, rural or very, urban. So with that, we have our objectives here, and we just understand the board's role a little bit more, the other organizations a little bit more, and then how we all can work together and contribute and be mindful and caretakers of this wonderful profession we call perfusion. Next slide. So again, this is our mission statement. It's on the website. It's been this way for many, many years. We've been credentialing perfusionists since 1975. And I know as an older perfusionist in years in this profession, as Joe is also, not old, just many years in the profession.
I started young.
We read this mission statement. We are aware of this mission statement, but it really is what we're here to do is maintain the quality standard, promote safety and protection of the public, and put a structure in place that credentials you in a way that is meaningful, and also in a way that provides structure for you to remain active and get that continuing education to stay up to speed with what's going on in the profession and to continue to improve your skill set and your practice. So any comments about that, Joe?
No, let's I think move forward, and I think this is very, very good. I want to reserve a couple of my thoughts and questions. We may come back to it.
Okay, great. Next slide. Okay, so the title is The Future of the ABCP, but it's always helpful to know where you. So I just wanted to kind of go back to the beginning of actually this credential that we're that is our high standard today. So for anybody who was around at this time, and I know there's several people watching that weren't even born, and that's okay, that's great. Perfusion kind of was born out of technology, and sometimes it just depended on where you were and what you were doing that you might be asked to learn this technology. It could have been a nurse in an operating room, a physician, a research clinician. Basically as heart-lung machine and cardiopulmonary bypass was being developed, it had no structure in terms of who was performing it. And that's kind of the Wild West. So in an effort to bring some structure around it, AMSEC, who was probably the first professional organization for perfusion, had an education committee, and they basically wanted to gain knowledge about who was doing what and how they were doing it, and could there ever be a standardized examination that would prove your certification and your ability and your competency to perform perfusion. So they basically worked for a couple of years on gathering the knowledge base. I believe they asked perfusionists who had done about 100 cases to provide feedback and maybe even questions. So they developed this exam for the first time and gave it another process so that they could establish some sort of baseline. So once they accomplished that, they realized that as a professional organization, they probably should have that certification done by maybe a neutral entity or a different entity that just did that. So really that's how the ABCP got started. So they basically took the work that AMSEC had done with the standards, guidelines, the exam information, and came up with a test that at the time was administered in 2 parts, written followed by an oral examination. And I know Joe has fond memories of his orals, as do I.
I would like to go back to that, Ann.
I've heard you say that, and you're not the only person who's mentioned it. So I know we'll get to that later as conversation, and hopefully some of the audience can give their perspective too. So the ABCP rolled along like that. About 1986, we were credentialing programs, also education programs from 1975 to 1986. But again, that needed to go to a more formal allied health organization, and that was CAHIA, respiratory therapists, X-ray techs, first assistants, all those allied health professions you can think of. They were credentialing all those programs. So we gave that over to them in 1986. So probably one of the bigger changes in our examination came in 1996, where we moved from a norm referenced to a criterions referenced examination. And what that means is instead of grading on the curve or doing percentiles of the examinee cohort, we basically changed it to where an individual is just testing against the test. So if all examinees could meet the passing criteria for the exam, everyone would pass. You weren't lumped together on how well people performed or didn't perform on any particular exam. So
And
that was a change there.
And that's what they call the being graded on a curve versus just being graded on a percentage of correct versus incorrect answers.
Correct.
That's what they meant by that. So if you had, let's just hypothetically say 100 people take the test, then there was no way, the old style, that all 100 could pass it unless they all aced it. If everybody aced it, well, that'd be a different issue, but that's not going to happen. So you took the highest and the lowest and then the middle, and then I guess created a curve and had some cutoff point where if you were to the right of the curve, you passed, the left of the curve, you failed.
Right, and I remember when I took my exam, you would get a rank as a percentile, and if you made the percentile, you passed. If you didn't, you failed. So it was all about how well everyone was performing on the exam instead of how an individual could perform against just the exam itself. So we did change that. It just seemed to be a better way to examine. We do have PhDs in education that are executive directors on our board that counsel us on examination process, analytics, statistics. That's how that came about in '96. And also at that point, the oral exam went away and was replaced by a written clinical applications portion. So that's when the second part of the exam became written and not oral. And then as technology advances, we did go to computer-based in 2006 for these two portions of the exam, which are referred to now as the basic science exam, the PBSE, and then the clinical applications exam, or the CAPE. So, and that's where we still are today.
So, yeah, so there's a lot to unpack, in this slide just on its own. Now, going all the way back to 73, 74 and the transition from AMSEC to the American Board for Certification, both of those involved Charlie, right? Charlie Reed was involved, of course, in AMSEC and then in the American Board. Him and there was him, Jerry Dobbs, James Deering. I guess those guys were all around during that period of time and were, I think, involved in that. And what happened with, because AMSEC, of course, transitioned the board, the certification over to them, to the board, created the board, and then, of course, the certification. And then AMSEC, it sort of evolved in a different way from the board, and both really have taken very different pathways because they both have different missions, of course. And I think some people may not really completely understand the difference in AMSEC and what their role is, because, of course, it's gotten muddied with some things, and we can discuss that later in the discussion, the further discussions, but then the board. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit more on those two, that piece, AMSEC versus the board, and what the two of them are meant to actually be?
Well, for me, AMSEC is a professional organization for perfusionists. American Society of Extracorporeal Technology is the formal spell out of AMSEC, and it has members, whereas the American Board, we are your credentialing body. We provide the credential. We aren't looking for members per se, because we're just the CC. Anyone who wants to be CCP is coming through us, mostly through their education program.
Mm-hmm.
So we're really about the education standards, the guidelines, what are the requirements to sit for the exam, what are the requirements to maintain your certification. So we're really not going for the membership and that content. There may be agendas there for other things for state and local that AMSEC would be more geared for.
Mm-hmm. 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 Totally understand.
And again, there's some micro certifications going on through AMSEC, which it's kind of interesting, and we can talk about that a little later in terms of
I think
what
that's
the
where
community.
Exactly. I think that's where the water gets a little muddy,
Mm-hmm.
and what has, I think, people somewhat confused, at least the young people that I come in contact with, not completely understanding what the missions of these organizations are and how they differ. They work, of course, and you only have AMSEC up here, but I think we should at least mention that there is another professional society that we have. I know it's not relevant to this, but there's AMSEC and there's the American Academy. And maybe you could talk a little bit about when it was founded and why it was founded, and how it, works similarly but differently than AMSEC does. But both of them have, as far as I can understand, the same mission.
Yes, very similar missions. The American Academy is very education focused and very supportive of students. And I'm not saying AMSEC is not, they are too. They just do it in different ways and have different tools that are available. So in the Academy, you have fellows membership, and if you are a fellow in the Academy, you are to present. You're to put content together and actually sponsor student papers. So it's really about education and the student experience as they become professional perfusionists.
Mm-hmm. And I know that, yes, and different from AMSEC in the sense that AMSEC seems more political. American Academy does not seem to have the same political structure, and AMSEC has been has been a driving force in state licensure. And as far as I know, unless you're grandfathered in, every state license now requires ABCP certification. So ABCP certification, from what I recall, was a national certification. If you were ABCP, if you were a CCP, you could go to any state and and you were considered certified and could work as a perfusionist. So you could leave one state today and work in another state tomorrow, completely different state across the country. That is no longer the case in about, I don't remember exact number now, 21 to 26 states. About half of our states are now licensed states, and half are not. What do you see in terms of that trend? And is the board in any way, is there a position that the board has on state licensure versus the national certification that we used to have? And do you see personally any advantage or disadvantage to either one?
So for the licensure states, they usually, as you said, they'll springboard off the American board in terms of the CCP credential. And our national office works closely with these licensure states at the beginning in terms of helping them establish criteria. But again, it can be locally driven by legislation and who's politically involved there. Mm-hmm. So while most states will just use our CCP requirements in terms of the clinical activity and the professional activity, you can get into some different requirements depending on your state. Like they might want continuing education every 2 years instead of our 3-year cycle. Mm-hmm. So there can be nuances that have been created purely through state legislation. Mm-hmm. Again, they usually start with us for the information of the credential, mm-hmm. and often springboard off it in terms of if we're a CCP, we're going to have a license there. Mm-hmm. So, but it can get strange.
Would you allow me to be a little provocative?
You always are.
Yes, I'm well aware. So, the way I sort of view the licensure push, I'm not anti-licensure. I'm not pro-licensure, actually. I'm really neither. I'm kind of on the fence with the whole thing. But when I look back at the evolution of that process, there was an interest, from what I understand, and again, this is my understanding of it, it may be that I'm wrong, and I accept that, but it was used as a way to slow down the advance of these very large national perfusion contract organizations. In particular, you had what was Psycor and then became Baxter Perfusion and so forth. And to prevent the ability to move resources back and forth in a seamless way from one account to another account in any individual state, you created or AMSEC promoted the creation of this state licensure under the, I believe, under the guise or in the stated intention of raising the level of professionalism and standing and protecting our jobs from other non-perfusion entities taking over extracorporeal services that we provided, whether it be perfusion or whether it be at the OR or the ECMO or whatever the case may be. And that's sort of how it started. I don't know that that is how it continues to exist, and I think the pandemic revealed a big problem that's associated with that. When you don't have reciprocity already built in, there was a lot of scrambling because of how short-staffed people were needing to get perfusionists to get in, mostly locums, in order to cover the ECMOs so that the hearts that were still being done could be done. And it created a lot of anxiety. And it was very stressful for a lot of different places, in particular those places that were state licensed states. So what are your thoughts on that, if you care to share them? and how much of what I said is accurate, how much of what I said may be inaccurate.
Well, I'm not sure in terms of the large contracts group in the beginning of licensure, but I know when it was presented to Texas, where I'm licensed, it was about job protection, for sure. And making sure that we were all credentialed appropriately, that we had the skill set, that just not anybody could go do it, which in effect was happening anyway through the strength of the CCP credential. But again, it was just another layer perceived as protection. But again, if you get legislation being passed that you're not aware of, that maybe lets respiratory therapy in on some things, or nursing, those lobbies can be, especially nursing, huge. And
Yeah.
and they can make an impact and get something done that maybe you're not aware of. So I think the premise for licensure at its core is genuine and for the right reasons, but I don't know if it's lived up to the hype in some circumstances.
No, and clearly, in my humble opinion, clearly not, because you have ECMO specialists here in Texas that are either nursing or respiratory therapy. There are programs that exist and operate without any perfusion oversight at all. And that also exists, I believe, in Georgia and other states as well, that I may not know exactly which states they are. And I think that notwithstanding, I think people go to perfusion school for all kinds of reasons, and it's a very difficult school. There's nothing easy about it. Your first day when you look at this heart-lung machine and all of the lines, and people, of course, you go through a process and you learn what this big jumbled mass of spaghetti, you start being able to identify lines just by looking at where it is, what it looks like, and there's ways that we teach each other how we do that so that we conduct safe perfusion and what all the things that we're supposed to do. It's not, I've never really viewed perfusion. If anybody wants to do my job, if anybody thinks they can do my job and they care to come in and do this aortic dissection, have at it. Go right ahead. Our profession, our job is not for the faint of heart. And though I imagine there probably are some people out there that have enough arrogance to believe, oh, I could do that, just as just based on their experience in some other field, they can't. It would be an epic disaster. And most, I think, nurses, most respiratory therapists are very smart people, and they look at that and say, no, you don't do that without training. ECMO is different, but it still is an extracorporeal technology. And I wonder, I think, would we have been better off, Texas, other states, would we have been better off to say, let's focus our attention and our energy and our economic power into the American board to make that strong versus having all of these individual states with all of these individual rules that they themselves are controlling, because our lobby is, as you pointed out, very small, 4,500 lobby, 3.5 million nurses, much larger lobby, and a lobby that small gets whittled down even smaller when you talk about each state and the number of perfusionists that each state has. So to me, it just seems like a direction. You have a lot of 20, 24, 25, whatever states it is, all with their own direction. And then you have the American board here with a direction. And how do you, it's like herding cats. How do you all have the same direction?
Right. And I think that's where I still, if I take off my hat and I'm just Ann Guercio perfusionist, I still think that those battles are best waged on the state and local level, because there's just such variety in market depending on where you are, supply, demand, and how are you going to get these services to everybody in our healthcare system. So I feel like the board is about the credential and about the education. Going out into, which is it's coming up more and more, just discussing based on some transmedics things that are going on with organ procurement and who's doing that.
Yes.
Right. So, like I said at the beginning, there's pressure coming and challenges coming. So it's not that we're not aware. It's just, where do you think you can make your best impact? And as you say, right now, board of directors of 9 people, trying to police or put in some more constraint on the United States. It's a big project.
It is. It's a very big challenge, and of course, there's all these services that need to be done, best served by perfusion. But if we don't have the people, the resources to those jobs, the industry will find someone who can. I think that's just economics 101. The
right,
reality
that's our free market.
Yeah, exactly. Please, let me let you continue. I have so many more questions, but if I don't let you continue, you'll never get through your slides.
Okay, next slide. And again, so here's the alphabet soup slide, and over to the left there, just showing our connection with the education. So CAHIA kind of regrouped, and now they're called CAHAP. Again, it's a commission on allied health education programs. So they have committees on accreditation, and so that's where you see the big square in the middle called the AC. So that is the Accreditation Committee for Perfusion Education. And we have members on that committee. And you can see the PPDC, which is the Perfusion Program Directors Council. They also have representation on that committee. And again, this is to ensure that perfusion programs are teaching what they need to be teaching. They're providing the clinical exposure that is required to take the board's exam when they graduate, and that the consensus curriculum is reflective of what perfusionists do in their job. We have cardiothoracic surgeons that sit on the ACPE, the anesthesiologists. So it's a very important group, and I don't think our perfusion community, once you've passed that exam and you're certified and you're filing your cases, this might be a blip on your radar, but this is really important, because as schools come and go and students, either we are starting to graduate more over the coming years, again, there's market and economic consequences to that. And I feel like this is a really important group, and we're a part of it, but there's lots of other participants as well. And we've had a lot of questions. I'm going to show some survey results in a minute from our last survey. Are becoming concerned about influx into the market and too many of us. We've heard there's not enough of us. Now people are coming a little more concerned about, are there going to be too many of us? And as you said, the services that have been filled by industry, we might want to get into that more, but will we have a place? And I think that's come up in a lot of conversation. And as new schools apply for candidacy through the ACPE, they're the gatekeeper of programs and site visits and allowing programs to continue, meet their requirements, submit their annual reports. That's why I said it's a really important group, and we need to really liaison with them, collaborate with them, and hear from our community. What do you think? Do you think that 200 graduates a year is a problem, or there should be 400 graduates a year? And I'm going to get into some future things that we're planning to do with the program directors to kind of give everyone a little better picture of what's going on year to year. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. And then again, just over here on the professional societies, again, the academy there and AMSEC, I think all of the board of directors for the ABCP are members of one or both of these societies. We do feel it is important to participate and be there and liaison as well. At one of these meetings, we usually alternate year to year. We'll do it like this past year. We did it liaison panel at the academy in terms of getting the Canadian representative, the ACPE representative, also AMSEC. We get all these people together in just a breakout session where we talk about what's going on with everybody, what's everybody doing, what are their concerns, what's coming for them, and how can we all work well together. And it was a little, when it started, I think everyone was a little unsure about stepping on toes and who does what, but the more we've done this, the more we realize we're all in this together, and we just need to work together. So next slide. Okay, so we did do a survey this past recertification cycle. Again, this you can opt out, but we did get about a 60% response rate. So I just wanted to show a few slides that were interesting and different from when we did this survey about 5-6 years ago. So for the first time in a while, we're younger and not older. So that 50 to 59 group was actually pretty predominant for a while, which got everyone a little concerned about retirement and a shortage, and what are we going to do? But if you look at that now, that 50 and under group is real strong, and look at that 30 to 39 group. Mm-hmm. They're the majority of the breakout now. So that's nice to see, I think. I mean, and it probably reflects the concern and the action to take more students, maybe open some more schools, and get more perfusionists out there. So again, I think anyone who's been in this profession long enough, like Joe and myself, recognize that this was a male-dominated field for a long time. But as you get down into that younger crowd, you're seeing a nice mix and almost equal, if not a little bit more, in that youngest sector of females. So good to see in terms of equality and everybody getting in there, and if they like it, they want to do it.
Now, wait a second, Ann. Hold on. Okay, I was going to see this slide, okay? I have not previewed these slides. Female, male, other, 3.7%, 70 years or greater.
So again, in our current society, we do gender by identity and how people identify as male or female or other. So we did include that this past year.
I'm not as surprised seeing the two top bars. I am surprised at that lower bar.
Well, and it could definitely be a reflection of the N number in that group.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yes, that's true. Very good point. Okay.
Okay.
I can't wait till you send me the survey.
Okay.
You're going to need another category.
I can't wait to hear what that suggestion is. So, and then something that did stand out, and I'm surprised, but Joe and I, we've been talking about it already today, is the difference in who's providing ECMO from our 2017 survey to this past year. And again, you can see that in 2017, it was still majority perfusion. This past cycle, you can see that ECMO specialists have outpaced us.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting, and I'm not surprised.
Right. I think that anybody who's, we've all been in the pandemic, but anyone who's been doing a lot of ECMO, adult ECMO, has seen this. Mm-hmm. And this wouldn't be a surprise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, and I absolutely can understand it, and I mean we as a group I think we still are feeling the effects of the COVID, the pandemic, and the sheer volume of ECMO patients and duration that they were on ECMO. It really affected us tremendously, but just from a, depending on what ECMO does, if it continues to grow as a modality, its growth has just outpaced to a degree that I don't think perfusion alone has the manpower strength to support it. There has to be another way of doing it. Now, I don't think turning it all over is necessarily the answer. I'm a much stronger believer in a blended program that has perfusion oversight and management, but at the bedside, there has to be. We just don't have enough perfusionists to do that, and that's of course a conundrum, because if you increase the number of perfusionists so that you can do that, and ECMO being a rather unpredictable sort of modality, and it can go down and not need to be used for a significant period of time, can be a real problem, because then you do have a glut of perfusionists, and how you manage staffing on with an unpredictable volume over time is very challenging. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on how, where you see that going. Again,
I think the 24/7 bedside monitoring just doesn't work for perfusion. But again, I agree that we need to be a part of it. Mm-hmm. And for the other therapies as well, mechanical circulatory support. Those things are in our wheelhouse. We train, we test. That's our scope. And while there might not be enough of us to do it day to day, every day, we can certainly be a part of the coordination, the education, and the oversight. Mm-hmm. And I think those therapies would be better served that way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think so. Okay. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next slide. Okay. So some things that are coming up about the future here. And my face is kind of in the way of the top of this slide. So I'll talk about the test.
Yeah. So Ann, that's only on Hey Ann, I'm sorry to interrupt you. So that's only on your end. I think, can she move herself off of her slide? David? Because you're not overlaying the slide to us.
Okay,
That's only on
let me
your
move this.
computer.
Never mind. You're right. Now I'm getting smart here.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you. I did it.
No worries.
Okay. So again, I talked earlier about how we're really involved with all of our organizations, education, professional, and in terms of collaboration. We have recently been talking with the Program Directors Council on, we put out that annual newsletter. I'm not sure how many people go through and read it, but we do list out the number of CCPs from year to year, new, how many we've gained, how many we've lost, just through the certification process. But what we haven't been very good about is matching that with perfusion schools. How many students are enrolled? When are they projected to graduate? So when will they basically hit the market? And that's something we feel that with collaborating with the PPDC, we can provide a better snapshot of that in one place. So we have been talking about putting that in the annual report, adding that piece of matriculation of students. So you can, the perfusion community can see that and kind of put it side by side, put it together instead of having to go to the program director's website to kind of get a handle on how many schools are open, how many students are coming out, and then you've got to go to our report to figure out how many CCPs we have now, how many are we losing or did we lose this past year due to retirement or loss of certification. So to have that in one place might help to put a better picture together, because if you go to any meeting, I know we've talked about it here, often on your shows, workforce is important to perfusion, to the perfusion community. They want to know, are we going to be overrun, or are we becoming extinct? Mm-hmm. So I think this information is going to help people get data around it to have a better picture, instead of maybe hearing somebody say, oh, there's a shortage. Well, maybe there is, maybe there isn't, and have a little more accuracy on that, so people can really look at that picture and say, okay, this is about right, or I see a glut coming, just to kind of put some structure around it. So we're excited about that. In terms of computer testing, we did move away from our prior computer test company, and we started January 1st this year with a new company, and that was due to service in terms of how they work with us, things that might happen at a testing site, feedback we got from examinees. And so it was really time to look around for something better. So we took that on this year, and one of our goals at that time was to provide real-time results at time of testing. Everyone who's taken the test in the past knows you're waiting a couple of weeks for that letter. And and your employer's waiting for it. There's a lot riding on getting those results. So this past spring exam, which just ended last weekend, at time of testing, we were able to let the examinee know how many correct total they got and what was required to pass. So they knew that walking out. Now, they still will need to get their formal letter from the national office. They will get a diagnostic report of how they performed in the different categories. So they'll get more information. But just talking to students at graduation and running that by them in terms of feedback, they were all about it. You know, we're an instant gratification society anymore. So this was seen as a real positive and a goal to strive for, and we just completed that. And I'm really excited to see the feedback we get from the examinees that just took this exam about that added feature. And of course, we want to improve the turnaround in getting that formal letter so it's faster. And online filing, I'll be quite honest, the pandemic really hampered our hopes for enhancing the way you all go online and file your cases and recertify and provide your professional activity. The company that we worked with was decimated by COVID in terms of their workforce. And so the things that we really were hoping to roll out and have up and going by now were not able to happen. And we did have to move on with some other IT support. So I'll be the first to apologize that it's not what we wanted it to be. It's not what it can be. And that's what we'll be working on as well in terms of uploading files from electronic sources. Those of you that are using an EMR or you have a database, we want to make sure that you could upload that pretty easily. We've had a lot of feedback from the community about the certificate and do we have to mail that out and the sticker and, you know, could we have an electronic version of that? So all of those things are on the table, relaunching the app. So again, those are things we really want to get to with IT. We just really took a little bit of a hit with the pandemic there. And for anyone who's ever called the national office, you know, you get a real person and they're all about helping you. And they've been with us since the beginning, not every single person on staff, but a lot of them.
Pat Kirkland.
Pat Kirkland. I know
Shout out
everybody.
to her.
And you know, every perfusionist, whether you call the national office or not, you really do. We all owe them such a debt of gratitude for their passion and just their demeanor and their willingness, and they've just been there. But these people are getting older and looking to retire. So knowing that, the board will be looking at restructuring in the coming years. What we want to happen is that you, as the perfusion community, really don't notice it too much and nothing changes for you or only gets better. So that's our goal, is that it goes seamlessly and we don't miss a beat and you always have the support that you need. So comments on that, Joe? I know you've visited the national office more than once.
Absolutely. So if I can, I'll tell one quick story, if I may, about Pat Kirkland, somebody who I have tremendous amount of respect for and love very much, and always think about it and hope the best for in her future plans. I know she's somewhat partially retired, which I hate hearing because it means I'm going, I never thought it'd be her before me. Honestly, she's a lot younger than I am. But when I was doing the New Orleans conference live, I remember my wife Vicki and I, we had these flyers printed. We had 5,000 of them printed, and they were all in these boxes, and we put them in our little airplane, and we flew to the Hattiesburg airport, and Pat met us at the airport, and we loaded these flyers into her car, and then she drove us to the American board, and we unloaded them and put them all out on desks so that the board could put all the stickers on them to mail them out to all of the perfusionists on a worldwide basis. We sent them to every CCP worldwide. That's why I had 5,000 of them. I think even need more than that. But it was a fun trip, and it was my first the first time that I was at the board. And we went and had lunch. We had a really lovely time, and it was great getting to know her on a more personal level, because all I ever knew of her for many, many years was a telephone call. And as you said, you call and she would always answer the phone, or somebody else would, but she was always available and always very helpful. And she'll be sorely missed, I think, by the board. But Kathy is doing a great job. I know that she has sort of moved up. Pat kind of mentored her, and she was, Pat's protege, if we could say it that way. And I think she's going to do an outstanding job moving the board forward and working with you, helping you. I know that. And you didn't address it. Hopefully you can. But that was my story about Pat. We had a great time, and we became closer. We were very close phone buddies, but we became a little more personal friends at that point in time. And Pat, if you're watching, I wish you well. But I know that, of course, Mark Richmond passed, and Beth, stayed with it and hired Stephen. Stephen came on board, and they have been working together. But I know that Beth is going to be retiring as well, as is Stephen. So what's the plan, or who is going to supplant them as the new educators for the board?
So Steve and Beth are co-executive directors now, and as they transition on, we will be replacing them. And there are several management companies out there that work with nonprofits, which is what we are, and we are vetting them scrupulously.
No doubt.
Because they have got to live up to some high standards. Mm-hmm. And as I said, we don't want any of that to be felt by the perfusion community. We want you to continue on, and just things get better and better. So, and in talking and at proposals from other groups, number one is that you've got to be able to relate and communicate and serve the perfusion community in the way that they are accustomed.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and I think that's a big challenge for you. Mm-hmm. You are now the president, and it's a lonely office. It's a tough thing to do. I have, I guess, really two questions. I'll ask the one question may be harder for you to answer, so I'm going to hold that for the second. The first is, notwithstanding the pandemic and how that would have been disastrous had you not transitioned to electronic means of testing versus in person like it used to be. Do you foresee in the future ever going back to an actual in-person oral board type of platform, which I still believe is far better at reflecting a person's understanding of their craft than is an electronic method for doing it? What's your thoughts on that? And then I'll let you answer that first, and then I'll ask you the last question that I have.
Like I shared earlier, you're not alone in your thought that is a valuable way to evaluate someone's clinical skills and their ability to communicate. We have to in the operating room. So. Mm-hmm. And it's not always pleasant conversation. when you're talking with surgeons or other clinicians and when things aren't going well. This is a stressful job. We all recognize that. I think logistically, it's challenging based on the way we used to do it. Now, does technology provide some opportunities there where you could take something from the oral examination experience and, for lack of a better word, tweak it with today's technology? Interesting idea.
That's a very, that's very thoughtful. That has given me some ideas. We'll need to talk about that offline. We need to go to dinner and have a conversation about that, because you just got some ideas in my head, which is dangerous. However, and with that said, I think that the boards for me, and for those of you who don't know, Ann, I don't know if you know this or not, you may, I've done them 3 times. So the first time I did it was in 1980, was the first time I was eligible. I graduated in 79, and I was able to take the boards in 1980. And passing that oral was a rite of passage. The experience itself was a rite of passage. Here are these people who are, have been doing this job, and I'm sitting in front of them, and what room didn't you want to get, and all of that kind of stuff felt like a rite of passage. But I did it then, and then I passed and was certified, but then because of my own irresponsibility, I lost my certification, and I had to retake the exam, both parts, in, I believe it was 1980. I want to say it was 85. It might have been 87. It was in Philadelphia. I can't remember which year it was. And it was written and oral, same thing. And I passed. And then I took it again because I did the same thing. I was yet again irresponsible, and I lost my certification. I had to retake it again. And it was in... I believe it was in 2000 and it was either 2003 or 2007. It was in Boston. I can't remember anymore. I've got long COVID. I'm not going to blame it on early dementia. I'm going to blame it on long COVID. But I took it again, and it was a written. But that it was in person, but it was a written, but then it was the written oral, a written practical, if you will. So both parts were written, and having all of those previous experiences, those 2 prior experiences, and that, I was like, that was very underwhelming. It didn't feel right. But then I have never, and I don't plan on ever having to go take it a 4th time. But I'm not going to lose my certification, so I don't have to worry about it. But I can't, I just don't, the written, I don't have a problem with that being being electronic test. I don't think that's, I mean, it is what it is. Whether you're there in a room and somebody's walking around and you're doing it with the number 2 pencil or not, I don't think that makes any difference. It's that second part. So those are my experiences. Those are my thoughts on all of that. And I'd love to talk to you about it. But my final question, go ahead. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, I do. Because, most of us, as I said earlier, that examination process is a blip on your radar in your professional career. For some of us, it happened many, many years ago. And there's no appetite that we've seen through survey to retest at a certain amount of time, like every 10 years, or, to do some of the things that other professions do. We just don't see people thinking that's desired or necessary. But the fact that you've gone through a testing scenario, so 3 different times, it's your feedback's very helpful. And I think that's where we would love more feedback from the perfusion community in terms of what your experience is with the certification exam. I mean, we always ask for it at the end of someone's exam, but what they'll tell you, and if they feel like they don't want to really say anything derogatory, because they feel like there might be repercussions from that. I don't know. But the more we talk about what everybody experienced and what people feel is appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good point. Because, my reason was different. But if you just look at today, and it's not a category on your slide, but it's going to need to be moving forward. How many people that had left industry, left perfusion for whatever it was, during the pandemic, whether because of it or not, at some point came back to the profession after various number of years of hiatus from industry. They may have stayed involved in industry, but they were not acting as a clinical perfusionist, lost their certification, and came back. What I see, just from an observer's perspective, is a significant number of people that are still doing that, who had left the profession for whatever reason coming back. That's what I see observationally. I don't know if that bears out in fact, but it's my perception anyway.
Mm-hmm. And we don't have a good handle on that in terms of reentry. But for those who do reentry, it's not easy.
No.
And you kind of wonder, are we making, are the guidelines for it realistic and approachable, but yet, still accomplish the mission?
Mm-hmm. And do we have because a lot of these people are very capable. They're excellent clinicians. But things evolve, things change. How we do perfusion today is not even closely resembling what I did 20 years ago or 30 years ago or 40 years ago, or how I learned. The fundamentals are the same. Human anatomy and physiology doesn't change, but all of these things. Look, when we used 60 cycle, we didn't even have cardioplegia when I trained. It didn't exist. We used intermittent cross clamping. So all these things, the nuances of our profession have changed dramatically, and I wish there was a way to take people who may have taken that time off and having a program designed as a preparation for the exam, that is a little more robust than maybe, what Ohio State used to provide. They used to have that, I can't remember, the Swank was the last name. I can't remember her last name. I don't remember there was a lady there that ran it. I just don't remember her name right now. But that was a good program. I actually took that program for the third time that I took the exam, and it was worthwhile. But I was still active in the profession. Having something that maybe instead of it being having to go back to an entire school, a good maybe 30-day program that really prepared someone who had the base knowledge to get them caught up to speed to be able to take the exam. Very intense program for that would be something perhaps worthwhile to have. It may not be realistic, but it may be worthwhile having. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because knowing some reentrants and there's a lot of anxiety there, and they're looking for ways to prepare, especially if they've haven't been in the education for a while, and computer testing might be new for some of them.
Mm-hmm.
Just so we're very geared toward perfusion graduates. There's no question in terms of the examination process. But there is a possibly underserved group for reentry.
Yeah, I think it would help.
And what their education and preparation could be.
It would help our numbers, because I would rather have somebody like that than someone who's going to a perfusion program that they're trying to, because of need, rush people through and coming out ill prepared. I would rather the programs focus on creating graduates who exceed what our own standards were, which I thought were very high and very difficult to achieve. I'd rather that continue to be the case and help our numbers by bringing people back into industry that have already experienced and done that, rather than shortening or reducing the quality of the education for the sake of expedient graduations, because our numbers need we need the people. So that's something that, I do I'm worried about, seeing the type of people graduating from school, that the schools maintain a very, very high standard, and that the exam not be made easier, but that it really reflect a person's knowledge, understanding, training, because that will create training centers training programs that will flourish, and those that will not. And I think, again, that's a market issue and a board issue that's way above my pay grade. I'd like for you, if you could, I have one final question, and I'd like you to close us out on that. And that is, how can we, as a community, and for anybody who may see this now, or who is watching it now, or may watch it later, what can we do as a community to help Ann Guercio have the most successful tenure as president of the board? How can we help you?
Talk to me.
Fair enough.
And, I would, even if you're not maybe enamored with what you experience or see in some of the perfusion organizations you can participate in, you should participate. Because those committees, that work being done is going to affect you. Why not be at the table, a part of it? We're the board of directors, we're volunteers. I know, Joe, you give a lot of extra time, and people are busy, but you're not going to be able to have too much of a voice about things you're not happy about if you're not participating in the process. And I think I actually will be done with the board next year. It's my last year, and I'm done with my term. I'm maxed out basically, and I will continue to be participating in organizations. There's a grassroots effort to get our Texas State Society going for perfusion.
That'd be great.
And I want to help there. I don't have the bandwidth to lead that charge, but I've definitely been involved with some of the people trying to get it going. That's a great place you're with your colleagues, maybe some of them are friends, but you're talking about what's important to you. And sometimes we only hear from the loud voices, and then but yet you've got something to say, or you're experiencing something that we're not aware of in terms of a board. And we don't ever want to make decisions that are to the detriment of someone keeping their certification. So all these things about case requirements, what cases count, we debate often, mostly because they'll write it to the national office about something they're experiencing, and hey, can I use this for a case? Or my surgeon's gone to 100% off pump. How am I going to get my cases? We need to hear those scenarios and what people experience, because we're going to make decisions, and we want to make them to be broad enough, but not so exclusionary that people are going to lose out. We need we need all of us, but we need to know. And so I feel like in maybe the past 5 or more years, I feel like the board is as like coming on these programs, doing talks at the national meetings. We are approachable. I'm going to work today. I'm on call. I'm a perfusionist, just like the other. I'm part of the 4600. I need my 40 cases. I need my professional activity. We're all in this. So the more we can understand about what people are experiencing, what they're concerned about, we're just going to make better decisions.
Absolutely. How can people best get a hold of you? Just go through the national office? Do you have a particular email that you use?
You can go through the national office, but I can also provide my personal email.
Sure. If you do that, David, can we add that to this at the end, or can you add it now? You can add it in the comments? Okay, yeah. So what is the best email we'll put that in the comments right now so people can see that.
It would be the one I used to send the slides.
Your iCloud account?
Yeah.
Okay, David, you have it already. So your iCloud account. Okay, very good. We'll add that to the comments so people can get it. Uh-oh, what happened? Oh, there you go. Oh, you good. Okay. And we'll make sure people get that. And we'll send out a notice, too, of how to reach out to you. So we'll send people a notice to tell them that this program exists and they can watch it at their leisure. And we'll also add that information in there on how people can reach you. And I can't say again?
Yeah, we're going to get it out. Yeah, I'm going to add it and pin it, so it's going to be pop-up at the top of the...
Got it. They're putting it in now, so it'll end up here in a few minutes, and it'll be at the end of the program. But we'll make sure people are aware of how to reach out to you. And what I tell my colleagues is echo exactly what you just said, Ann, is please reach out to Ann, reach out to the board, send them a message, send them an email about your concerns, your compliments, suggestions, whatever the case may be. Just let it be productive. If there's a problem, have a suggested solution at least if you can. But you know what? They're there to help solve our problems as practicing clinicians. And Ann, I've known her long enough to know that she takes her role and her responsibilities very seriously. I know that the board does, and we as a community, we are the American board at the end of the day. Every CCP is a stockholder in the American Board of Cardiovascular Perfusion. That is what our certification says. And so let's all be active participants, not just members. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Perfect. All right. We will see you all later. I want to thank Ann again, congratulate her again, and look forward to seeing you and talking to you in the very near future. I want to take you back to dinner again. Hopefully you'll want to go back to Houston's. That was really good. You can't deny it.
It was good.
And we're gonna go again and have a good conversation. Thank you, everyone, and I wish you all the best week ever. Be safe. Bye. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.
See you tomorrow. That reminds me. See you tomorrow. Is it Tammy's thing tomorrow?
No, it's Knowledge Nuggets.
Knowledge Nuggets. John Ingram's Knowledge Nuggets tomorrow. So hopefully, Ann, you can tune into that.
Yes.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.